All right, and there's the record. And here's this record. And here we go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Trash Pandas.
Trash Pandas.
I am your host, Lindsay, along with my beautiful co-host,
Lauren.
We have a special guest.
Documentary Dave.
Documentary Dave.
Special like short bus helmet. Cool. Yeah, I know.
You're just Documentary Dave from here on out, I feel like.
So tonight we have a very awesome
ladies love my docs. That's yeah.
I love your doc.
Wait, like your cargo shorts?
Hey, don't mess with my purse pants. I'm a huge fan of my purse pants.
Tightest doc of my life. The biggest doc.
Okay, so we're talking tonight about the
a super creepy prick. Yeah.
The Netflix documentary Voyeur.
The Voyeur.
And are we ready for the deep dive?
Yeah. So and let's be real. Like we all, I think, just as a preface, like we all have a little bit of voyeuristic tendencies in us. Like we love watching. Like, dude, like how many times did okay, there's a car crash on the side of the road. You're going to stop and watch. Guess what? That means you're a voyeur.
Right. We
call
them from Chicago. We call them gawkers.
Gawkers, yeah.
Gawkers.
Okay. Yep. I call them looky-loos. I'm from Michigan, so I don't know if that's like a Michigan thing or if that's just like an all-the-time thing. But looky-loos,
the Michigan
gawkers,
thing, we call them gawkers in Chicago.
Voyeurs, whatever it is, it's somebody that takes a scenario that they
like seeing things they're not supposed to be seeing.
Right.
Yeah.
Like intimate moments, personal moments.
I have a problem, like if I see an accident when I'm driving, I am that gawker. And I think that there's a part of me that wants to know, is everyone okay?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how horrific is it?
But then there's a part of me that wants to see the car on flames.
Horrific. It's like that train wreck that you can't look away from.
So, okay, I will agree with you. I have the same kind of issue. I have been known to sometimes take I'll turn on my video and do one of these so I can drive past and then look back and see what was going on.
You're such a voyeur.
But I know I really am a voyeur. Like I will watch some stuff, but then I've also had instances where like there's been people that have been maybe hurt, or maybe the ambulance hasn't been there yet, or the police haven't been there yet, and I feel the need to go back and like look it up.
Mm-hmm.
Like Google
it.
Oh
yeah, I will Google it after the fact.
Hey, because you want to know what happened.
See exactly what
happened.
Exactly.
Are there names involved?
Yep.
I want to know.
And that's somewhat voyeuristic tendencies, because you feel the need to go back because you're like connected to that.
Yeah,
and that's the news in general. I mean, if it bleeds, it leads. They know what's going to hook your attention.
I mean, I think we will all say like Facebook gives you that ability to stalk people. Like you definitely, like we are encouraged to be slightly voyeuristic.
Voyeuristic tendencies are a real thing, even if it comes down to I just want to look at my boyfriend's ex, or I just want to look at what's
going on with his life.
It's a certain level of curiosity,
stuff, and you see exactly. I mean, there's literally stalking is like voyeurism. Like people that are stalkers can be voyeuristic, and they want to see your life because they want to know what's happening.
So this doc came out actually in 2017. So it's a couple years old.
Yeah.
And there is a book that goes along with it that you can go and order. But yeah, so it starts with the intro of Gay Talese. And for those who don't know who Gay Talese is, he is a very, very renowned author and reporter. At the time they were filming, he's 80 years old.
I wrote, he is what I want to be. Those tailored suits, the brownstone in Manhattan. A reporter.
You kind of wonder, like, how close did he live to Epstein? Like, I kind of want to know.
Yeah, you know he met him, in some kind of circle, he fucking met him.
And he has a beautiful name too, even though for sure it's gay. But
Yeah, well, and so that's the thing. So and you know, he goes down to, you know, his brownstone in his basement, which he says it's a converted wine cellar.
Yeah.
And oh my God, he's a little bit hoarder. He's got his 50-year professional career of like clippings and articles in filing cabinets and boxes and bins, but and everything is sorted and categorized by year, by topic.
And one of the things that I wrote down, I was like, he quote unquote said, I keep all of this crap I keep. And it's like he's even recalling it as crap. It's bullshit. It doesn't matter, but I keep it. And so you can tell that he's like a hoarder in the sense that he has to maintain the info.
Well, and he has a rationalization for it. Like,
right.
So yeah, because his rationalization about it is that he's not a reporter, he's a journalist. And I think he gets into this a little bit later, where like a reporter goes out, covers a story, and then they're gone. Whereas what he does is the in-depth, and he you know, he even says, he's like, you know, because you might touch base with somebody 10, 20, 30 years later, and that's where the story is, not when you talk to them now.
Well,
exactly.
What really stood out for me was the parallel of him collecting all of his own shit, and then later on when we should see Gerald Foos's own collection.
Oh God, yeah.
And just to see that there's parallels between the two.
Sure.
Because here's my whole thing is I think we'll get more into it, but I think Gay Talese really wanted to be empathetic towards the voyeur because they were a lot of one and the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he even says that in the beginning, as he's like, I'm a journalist, I am a voyeur by nature.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think like what that begins to set up for us is seeing a lot of parallels between him and his subject, which is the voyeur.
And so then they get into the guy, whose name is Gerald Foos.
And so this guy bought a motel in Aurora, Colorado called Manor Hour Hotel.
But the crazy part is he actually talks to his wife before he does this. So this guy's married.
Right.
Talks to his wife and says at first he says he wants to buy a lavatory, which is a bathroom. I'm like, how do you buy just a bathroom? What the hell is that about? And then, and he has a couple of those. He has a couple of malapropisms throughout the course of this. And so then he says he goes and he looks at a couple different properties, and then he finally finds this Manor House Motel. And says he immediately falls in love with it.
He buys it for the sole purpose of spying on people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, and he says he bought it because it has a very high-pitched roof.
Right. So
he can create like catwalk.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like the high-pitched roof is like really important.
Right.
Because he can create the catwalk that he can walk down. He can have the
he looks in vents.
The little vents down.
Oh yeah, and he said he did all the work himself up there. So you know, he installed all these vents. And apparently had his wife lay down on one of the beds to see if she could see him.
Yeah.
Yes. So one of the things that I was going to say about that is that I said that what the fuck is his name? Gay Talese said that a lot of writers think that it's over when it's done, but really it's just the beginning.
Yep.
Yeah.
And being able to go into this area and see all of the stuff that he's seeing, and with Gerald being up there and making that catwalk, you know.
Oh yeah. So and honestly, like one of the craziest things too is not only was this guy married, his first wife dies, and he finds another chick.
Yeah.
That's okay with him doing
and he
this.
says that was probably an act of God. And I was like, oh, you mean the act of a devil? Like, because like really? But he has such a God, he has such a God complex through this whole thing. Like his whole like motivating factor is really to like play with these people.
Yeah, or at least
have some power over the situation. He's all seeing, he's omnipresent. he is this like all-seeing God.
Oh, and that one scene was totally bizarre where like they have that little scale model of the motel.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
love
And he
that.
talks
He
about
looks
like
up.
this must be what being God
Yeah.
is like, and he lifts the little bottle off the table and just,
Yeah. Yeah.
because that's God.
I love
God's
that
a
scene,
prankster.
though.
That's
Like, because to me, I was
It
like,
was a
this
great
is-
analogy.
It's exactly what he thinks is
Yeah.
happening.
although
So
it does explain why I can't find my keys sometimes. I'm just saying. I think
Right.
that's-
so Gay says that, okay, so what does anyone remember what was the year that Gay came out with that book, that Love Thy Neighbor?
So it was 1979.
Okay.
He came out with Love Thy Neighbor because he got the letter from Gerald on January 7th of 1980.
Okay, so this
the guy
is what I was
references it.
gonna say. So it was like they had been corresponding for like 5 years after Gay had released this book. And then between the time Gay decides to like go and actually see the hotel, because Gay's like, I saw this with my own eyes.
Oh well, no. So he got the
This
first
is
letter.
real.
So the book came out. So Love Thy Neighbor came out in 79, and
Yeah.
this is one of the things that really put Gay Talese on the map.
Yeah.
So if you guys want to check out something, it's obviously still out for print. So and here we get into like a little bit of Gay's backstory, which is interesting because he's married, he has kids, and he goes and
To
lives
the
at
nudist
this
colony.
called Sandstone in Los Angeles, this nudist
Yeah.
colony / swinger colony.
Yeah.
Has sex with all of the these other women and all that
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
stuff. And starts to do like the talk show circuit. And his
Yeah.
wife he's on Phil Donahue, which
Yeah,
Right.
that's hilarious. That's in the documentary. Yeah.
so he's on Donahue, and his wife is with him. And
Yeah.
Donahue asked the wife, she's like, he's like, well, what do you think about all this whole thing he's
Yeah.
just done? And she was like, well, he's a reporter, he's got to do what he's got to do. And so that's almost kind of like another parallel that I made. Gerald keeps finding these submissive women to
These
go along with
complicit
him, and
women.
Gay
She
kind of
said,
did the same
it's
thing.
not up to me. A person is allowed to do whatever they want to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so she's very like,
Yeah, you're right. Dave, I didn't even think about that parallel as well. Like there's so many parallels
Mhm.
between the two. It's wild.
So then it was later that same year in 1980 that Gay
Yup.
decides
Yeah.
to go out to the motel.
Yeah.
And goes with Gerald, and he describes this whole thing where there's a utility room, and then they got to pull out a ladder and go up to this access hatch, and then there's a door, and the door locks, and Gerald locks the door behind him, and then they're out there. And so the best part of the story that I absolutely
the story with his tie going through the vent.
yes. So
Yeah.
they're up there, and like Gerald gives him the thumbs up and calls him over to
Yeah.
a vent, and he's watching this lady give a guy a blowjob, and Gay keeps leaning down further and further over to get a better look, and Gerald reaches over, like grabs him by the back of the neck and pulls him up because his tie,
Yeah.
his bright red silk tie, is
And it was
hanging
about
down
to,
through the
like, hit
vent
her
just
head.
above this lady's head.
and, well, that's the thing is that he said that it was like only a few
That's
inches above her
crazy.
head, and he eventually pulled him up. And that's the thing about that entire thing is that so we have like the tie story, and then it turns into him turning into like experiments.
Well, yeah. So
Really,
so
yeah. So
experiment.
there's 30 years of letters that go on.
He looks at himself as a researcher.
Oh yeah. We're not even there yet. His
I know,
crazy
but I'm
rationalization
just
shit.
saying,
Yeah.
like, this is part of it where he is like, he's God, he's a researcher.
Oh yeah.
Okay,
So they go back and forth via letters for 30 years. So you're talking like
Yeah.
1980 to about 2010.
So Foose would never allow Talese to like publish his name because he was worried about like the
Mhm.
ramifications of what would happen if his name had been published, like what would happen to him legally. But Talese was like, I am not publishing nonfiction. Like if we're gonna publish,
No, he's not publishing fiction.
Or sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. So sorry, yeah, my bad. We're not publishing fiction. Like if we're gonna publish this and we're going to go out there with a story, then I'm using your.
It's got to be all in. Yeah.
It's got to be all in.
So
we're doing
the
that.
thing that I have to
The
say
damn
about that
thing.
is that one key thing that he said that really stood out to me was he said, you can listen to what people say, but it's what they do.
So and that's when he was on the circuit talking about the
So he
Love
was
Thy Neighbor, but
saying
that
you have to like completely engage and completely immerse yourself
Mhm.
in that
Right.
in order for you to actually understand what's happening and how people are living, then you have to like make yourself part of it.
You have to dive in. Yeah.
I completely agree. I'm not trying to say that that's not a thing. I'm just saying that.
Oh, and I loved he was like, it's not like I was sitting up in the press box with a press pass around my naked body.
Right. Like, I think a good journalist is able to look past some shit. And I think a good journalist is able to like kind of be like that objective, like kind of bystander there. But like, I think what's interesting about this story is like, where does it cross the line? And that was some of Gay's problem when he went to the New Yorker when he was originally going to publish this, and he was talking to the editor, and he was like, well, I don't want to seem like too much of a creep, because like he's like, I really didn't see that much. Like,
yeah. Well, and the editor even says, you know, it's probably for the best that you didn't, because then it would almost seem unbelievable.
Right.
Yeah.
And it would make you seem too sympathetic to the criminal.
Yep.
And he is a criminal.
Well, and the crazy part is when he was talking, when Gay was talking to the editor about Foos, the one thing that like really caught my ear was when he's like, you know, everybody thinks he's like, you know, this, you know, creepy perv, and he actually says, you know, he isn't really creepy. And I'm like, well,
we talked about this. I was like,
but he is.
Yeah, no, he has disintegrated too much into this criminal.
Yeah.
Where he's like now feeling too much empathy for this criminal, and he's seeing too much of himself.
Oh yeah. And he says,
well,
you know,
and the reason,
he doesn't want to see himself as a creep.
The reason why I thought that he was kind of like relating that to himself is that he said specifically, one of us is going to die soon, so I want to get this done first.
Well, so he called him up in 2010 and said, look, I think you're ready, because you keep writing me these letters for the last 30 years. You're 78, or I'm 78, you're 81. One of us is going to die if we don't get this story out soon.
Right.
And so,
well, Foos kind of agrees, because he believes the statute of limitations has run out.
Yes.
Right.
So he kind of agrees at that point, but then takes it back.
Yeah. So then we get into the super, super creepy backstory of Joe.
Oh yeah, how he got into voyeurism with his aunt.
Wow, who lived across the street. So apparently he grew up in a rural area on a farm.
Yeah.
And he says, you know, one night, you know, his aunt lives across the street. Yeah. And here's where I think the rationalizations and the explanations and like the over-explaining really start to kick in with him, because he says it was like, you know, there was a compelling force, like he had no choice.
Yeah, right.
And the what was it? The beckoning window.
Yeah, the beckoning window.
He had no choice but to go across the street.
Gay was like, I love it, beckoning window.
Oh yeah.
So
Eat it up with a spoon.
So
eat it up with a spoon. Yeah.
Like, way to feed. First of all, way to feed into his God complex.
Oh yeah.
First of all, because he already thinks he's amazing. But two, like, okay, Lauren and I were talking about this, and here's the thing: a lot of serial killers started out with peeping Tom. Yep. A lot of
he
them
could have gone very differently.
Voyeurism. So my question was, like, at the end of this all, and maybe we can talk about this later, but like, I'm like, did the FBI look into serial rapes in those years in Colorado? Did they look into serial murders? Because rarely does it not go past voyeurism.
So there may be a reason why we didn't, and we'll get into that towards the end, because I think I have the answer to your question. So, and here's one of his other malapropisms that made me laugh. He said, you know, he felt that it was the compelling force was because he was entering puberance.
Puberance.
What the fuck is puberance?
Pretty sure he meant puberty, but it was entering puberance.
Didn't he say like partial? What did he say about partial?
Oh yeah, he had developed a partiality or something like that.
Partiality.
Yeah, because his aunt had big tits. He wanted to make sure that everybody knew that his aunt had big tits and red hair.
That the part where he said that that they would have like red hair Was that the one about the red
Oh no,
hair
this is we're
that's
getting into
different?
this.
Okay, I
So,
just want to make
no.
sure.
Oh, and he's into and
This
he's
is
and he
why
was
he has a flavor for red-haired people
Flavor.
he was
because of his aunt was red
oh
hair.
no. The red hair
And the
was
carpet matched the drapes.
well, yeah. No, he said his that's where his fascination because both of his wives had big tits, and he said like that's where his fascination.
Well,
with
no,
big
and
tits.
Catherine did too.
Yep. And well, that's what I mean. That's yeah. So his aunt. That's where his fascination with that began. And so, but like, and this is where like kind of like the delusions that he has about fame and fortune and that kind of stuff start kicking in, because now he's like, oh well, psychologists are going to want to write books about me.
Oh my God! Thank you for picking up on
and
that.
I'm going to tell them that
I was like, clearly this guy he wants to be famous. He
Oh,
wants
yeah.
he wants money for his story.
Oh yeah, because I'm not talking to anybody unless they open up their checkbook. Well, but you've been talking to him for 30
Right.
years without getting paid.
Right,
so.
right. You've been willingly talking to Gay Talese for 30 years, and Gay's not opening his pocketbook. But you've actually referenced talking about Gay like he is a god.
Oh
He
yeah.
said that. He looks at that guy like he's a god.
Like he's a god. And
so he has this whole complex of being a god and being like super influential and being able to control every situation.
one of the things I have written down is I said, dude is talking about being or about seeing big boobed, red-headed, carpet matched drapes women, and his wife, Anita.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah.
Is just like
Yep.
Wife number 2, yep.
Yeah, wife number 2, Anita. Anita's her name, and she
Yeah,
is
there's
just
something
like,
wrong with
okay,
her.
like it's very, very weird. She's just
It
like
seems
having
like
an
she's
okay
a
time
little
with him.
off.
She's a little touched. Well, so but to your earlier point, like that's where Gay asked him. He's like, okay, so well then why write to me? Like if you're not willing to go with this, like why did you write to me in the first place?
Right.
And this is where like the whole fame and like he's like, well, it's about notoriety. Like I want my story known because nobody ever did this before.
Right.
I'm pretty sure other people have done this before, but like nobody ever did this before. And and this is where and this is again where the rationalizations come in. He wasn't a peeping Tom. He wasn't a voyeur. He was a researcher.
Right. And this is what he
was
said.
Researching.
He watched between 2,000 to 3,000 people a year.
Yep. Oh, no, what I love as soon as he's done calling himself a researcher, they cut to the editor of the New Yorker, and the editor's like, yeah, he calls himself a researcher. Nah, he's just a freak. He's a perv. He's a weirdo. That's all he.
Well, and I'm glad because like part of me was going crazy watching this because I was like, everyone seems to be okay with this.
Yeah.
For 30 years.
Everyone seems to be like, this is normal.
This is
and
fine.
Then finally the New Yorker editor was like, dude's a freak. And I'm like, thank God that's out there because dude's a freak.
So, and apparently like all throughout the course of this correspondence, Gerald had promised Gay that he would give him the legal pads that he kept all of his research on.
Oh, is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah, they were like, there was like the yellow legal pads, like that's so that's where he had all those handwritten notes on. What struck me right off the bat is that he writes like he's a private investigator or a cop. It was like, subject 30s, mid 30s male, mid 30, but then just very, very weird in his and specific in his.
He had like graphs and charts like for each room.
Oh yeah, about like how many times couples have had sex and what kind of sex they had.
Yeah.
Super creepy. Yeah. But yeah, then I think Lauren, you touched on this. Yeah, so he basically watched 2,000 to 3,000 people a year.
And then he talks about the two dudes in sheep costumes. One woman staying at the motel kept hearing like
he talks about his first wife used to bring him food up there. Like, what the hell is wrong with that woman?
Okay, what's wrong with both of them? Because they both knew this shit was going on.
Well, yeah.
Like, what's wrong with both of you? Like, I'm not blaming the first wife. Like, I'm blaming both of you bitches.
He talks about multiple things that he has seen up there besides just sex.
Well, I love the story about the couple from Montana where like they're both really good looking.
Oh yeah.
And so he's like really looking forward to watching them. And right before they start doing it. Sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say, right before they start doing it, the husband reaches over and turns off the light in the TV,
Yeah.
and he gets all pissed off. So he goes back outside, gets in his car, pulls his car up to the where the parking spot outside their hotel room, and turns his brights on, and then goes back upstairs because he can see them now.
That's so
Right.
fucking gross.
So
dude.
I actually have that written down too. I said
Ugh.
people turn off the lights on the TV and he gets upset. So he turns on his headlights so that he can see inside, and they get upset about him leaving the headlights on.
Oh
No,
yeah,
they
apparently the guy says
obviously-
something like some idiot left his lights on, or
Yeah, exactly. It was like some idiot left his lights on,
I
or somebody
think-
left their lights on.
I think the funniest story is the bucket of chicken.
Wait, okay, so
Well, and
aside from people having sex.
well, in his notes, even in his notes, he refers to himself in the third person.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
as the voyeur.
He's the it's the voyeur that's looking at this, not Gerald.
Yeah.
It's
It's
the
not
voyeur.
him.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting how he does that, because it makes me wonder if there's something about that, if he's just trying to protect himself, or if he actually like disassociates and is like, this is the part of me that does this. And I'm actually curious to see if he's like a sociopath
No, he's a
where,
sociopath.
where he like disassociates completely and will just be like, this is a part of me that does this,
Mhm.
and then the other part of me just is like a normal person, right? So
But yeah, so the quote that I thought that Gay had that was interesting was that after reading through all these legal pads, was that it isn't boring, it's actually worse than that because it's real.
because it's real, exactly.
And he's like, so he would spend, and he talks
Yeah.
about spending like
Yeah.
hours every night up there,
Yeah.
and in many cases for
He's
nothing.
almost obsessed.
But
Oh,
he
I
had
don't know that I
the-
would use the word almost.
Like, here's the thing that makes him so like blah, 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 is that he was like, there's only so many times you can masturbate in one night.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like you
Like,
are up there. Listen, to me, I
I
took
mean,
that,
let's be real. What did we really expect he was doing up there? Like,
well,
listen,
yeah, but he's calling himself a researcher. Dude, you're not a researcher. You're a
I took that-
master.
I took that for what it was and was like,
researcher.
okay, he has like a tendency to masturbate to these things. However, he's also just somebody sitting up there and like just observing the way that people are.
right.
And so he performs a whole bunch of different types of like tests and like, like some types of like just seeing how people react to
Yeah, but we're
things.
all agreeing this is like
Oh,
terribly.
we all
wrong.
agree,
Okay.
yes, but we are also saying that these are the things that he's
'Cause,
claiming, right?
Like right, yeah, like I don't care though that
I
he's
said,
claiming
aside
that.
from sex, he sees people just doing bizarre
Bizarre
at-home
shit.
shit.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, he
in their
sees
nose.
two guys having sex, one of them dressed up as a
Okay.
sheep. I mean, that's
Exactly. Like I said, it's not like it always has to be like some sexual thing. It could
No.
just be people being weird.
Well, one of
and
my favorite
unconventional.
stories was him watching the guy eat the bucket of chicken.
oh my god, that was hilarious.
Rubbing his greasy hands
So-
on the
Yes.
blanket,
He had a
and he
stack.
got pissed off.
He had a stack of napkins
Yeah.
next to him. He put them in front of him, and then he ate this bucket of chicken
but just
and-
kept wiping his hands
and was
on the
wiping
comforter.
his hands on the comforter.
Yeah.
Where eventually, dude is like, "What the fuck?"
Oh yeah, so he's up there watching and getting angry, and actually says a little bit too loud, "Son of a bitch!"
Yeah.
Son of
And
a
the
bitch.
guy hears him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
when person hears him, he was just like, "Oh, I gotta like be quiet," and somebody's like, "Who's there?"
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy like apparently like goes over to the window and looks outside because he thinks somebody's out
That is
there. And
Well, and the
well, this
other
is why he says he hates dogs.
Yeah, no, this was my favorite.
Yes,
this
for
was
sure.
my
Yep,
favorite
yep, yep.
because he was like, I hate dogs because they know that I'm there. They can smell me. They can hear even the slightest sound.
Oh yeah.
And so there would be dogs that would be staring up at the vent knowing that he was there. And so he hated dogs. So that just even shows more of his God complex, where if he couldn't control the exact environment
Mhm.
of the situation, he hated it and
Well,
he
and so
wanted to destroy it.
the funniest part, though, is how judgy he gets about people. So here he
Oh
is
yeah.
up in the
Oh,
attic peeping on
like,
everybody.
get up here watching everyone, motherfucking.
And he's you know, I really didn't like you know, people swearing. I didn't like people yelling.
Yeah.
You know, that just really made me not like people.
The drug addicts.
Oh, we'll get there. Yeah. So actually, Lauren, you brought this up. So the little experiments he starts to do. First, he starts leaving dildos and vibrators next to and porn magazines in the drawer next to the Bible.
That women used it, and I was like, okay, what, one? Like, I just don't believe him.
I mean, it's the 80s. We were a little more casual then.
I mean, really though, you're just gonna open a drawer and be like, oh, a dildo.
If I'm alone,
I'm gonna use it.
Wait, what? Next, you're gonna tell me the pizza guy never gets laid? What happened? Like what?
just throwing it out there that if I was alone,
I think it's stupid. I think it's fucking stupid.
I
Like
think
you're just
there's a maybe.
You're just saying this to get a reaction.
Well, but the one I thought was interesting that I can actually see being a very real social experiment is he would put a suitcase in one of the rooms.
Yeah.
And then when somebody was checking in, he'd pretend to be on the phone with somebody and be like, oh yeah, hey, you know, oh yeah, just, you know, somebody says they left behind a suitcase with $1,000 in it. Has anybody, you know, called in to, you know, say that or turned it in or anything?
No.
And then he would watch the people and how they would act with the suitcase.
And there wouldn't be money in it, but it would be like whatever. And like he said that there were people that threw it out the back window. There were people that would put it in their trunk and drive it far away.
That's funny.
There were people, like, it was always somebody doing something to get rid of it rather than turning it in.
Yeah.
He doesn't mention anybody turning it in.
Human nature. Yeah.
Right. And that's the thing is that, you know, in that kind of circumstance, you're like looking at multiple different types of circumstances that would make that happen.
Well, and he did say that there were people that would like find the porn and the dildos and that kind of stuff and would come up to the front desk and be like, you know, have somebody clean your effing rooms, you know.
Oh yeah, got mad about it. Yeah.
So, but then we hit like,
okay, so in 1977, he says that he witnessed a murder, and this is where his story kind of gets all tripped up.
He says he's an accessory to a crime.
So he says a drug dealer and his girlfriend were in a room. He realized that this drug dealer was selling drugs to kids. So Foose saw where he hid his stash.
Yeah, in one of the vents on the wall. Yep.
He put his stash in the toilet and flushed it all down the toilet. When the drug dealer got back, he was like super fucking pissed that somebody took his stash, and he blamed it on his girlfriend because his girlfriend was the only one who
knew it was there. Yeah, allegedly.
Stash.
Yeah.
And so then they got into a physical altercation, which ended up in him strangling her.
Yep.
And
Foose makes a point of saying, you know, as the guy storms out and leaves, and he's looking at her there on the bed, that he sees her chest rise and fall like she's breathing.
She's alive.
Yeah. He thought that she was still alive and that she was okay. So then the next day, a cleaning woman comes around and realizes there's a dead body in that specific hotel room. And so then the cops are called and all of that. But here's the thing.
Well, so yeah, then we have he sells the hotel in 1997 to this Korean couple. And he kind of waffles on, you see a meeting with him and Gay, and he kind of waffles on whether or not the story can be told with the motel's name or with his name, because he's worried about the Korean couple coming back after him for damages, because, you know, they would lose customers because of notoriety, because this had happened there and all that stuff. Yeah. Even though like they went through, like they showed like the shitty job he did taking all of the vents out and all that kind of crap when he sold it.
Right.
And this is when Gay goes to Gerald's house, and this is where we get like some of the
the Foose collection of memorabilia.
Dude's collecting Barbies, coins, stamps, swords, and guns, which is a little concerning.
What?
Guns.
Oh,
yeah.
I
Oh, you
didn't
didn't.
see
Oh, you
them.
didn't see the gun cases that he. Oh, yeah. So then they go down in the basement, and it's a sports. It's like basically a sports memorabilia
Sports
shop. It's
memorabilia.
crazy.
Yeah, there's like all of these cards and
He says he's
everything,
got
and
like
she's
2 to 3
like,
million cards.
he's saying like Foose is saying like this specific card is worth $500,000, and Talisa's like, I don't know if it is or if it's not. Like,
Well,
I
and
don't know
that
if
was
this
part of
guy's
his point.
fucking crazy or if he's
Oh,
not.
yeah. So and that was part of Gay's point is he was like, okay, so like, and he says Gerald even mentioned to him that part of the reason why he might be okay with the story being told is because he wants to sell all this shit
Right.
and cash out, and the notoriety and fame of the book will help him inflate the prices.
Right.
So like because of that, when he's starting to question. Like he's like, I don't know if these cards are worth that shit. So Gay starts wondering, hey, how honest is this guy really? And so he wants to at least he wants to at least get some verification on anything.
Well, yeah. So Talise goes and tries to find records of the death at the motel.
Yeah, because he's like, hey, I've got the date, I've got the location. This should be the easiest thing in the world to verify.
So there are none. And of course, any major publication is going to check your sources.
Well, yeah. So he calls the cops. He calls the coroner.
So this throws Foose credibility into question, like 1,000%. Like, who is this guy? Because we actually find out that there was no reported murder there.
Yeah, the cops, the coroner, the Denver Post have no record of anything.
There was a similar reported...
the New Yorker fact checker found one that had happened like a week before,
like 2 miles away
in a different hotel.
Yeah. So there's like all this, his credibility is totally thrown into question.
But then I love that Gay sits there after this revelation and he's like, but why would you make up the worst story about yourself that like you didn't have, like, why would he do that? Duh, Gay, to get you to sell the damn book and pay him for this shit.
Line and sinker.
Yeah.
Like any fucking sociopath. Like fucking Ted Bundy with and
oh yeah. No, I know exactly. Yeah. Well, no, but so I mean, and that's so you've even got the one editor or the one fact checker from the New Yorker. He was like, "Look, here's the reality of the situation. Anytime you have a single source story, you're pretty much completely reliant and dependent on them. We know that Gay was up there, in the area, like in the attic. So we know he didn't make it up. And he says, would I stake my life or reputation on Gerald's recollection? No.
Nope.
So then I guess Gay recruits his daughter to paint what will become the cover of the book.
Yeah.
Gives her a postcard and she's not happy with like the angle and she wants to find other photos of it.
Yeah.
So she goes to Google Maps to pull it up and the motel is gone.
It has been torn down.
It no longer exists. It's been leveled.
Yeah. And Gay has no idea about this, which is just like mind-blowing to me. Like, you've been following this story for how long and you say you're a great reporter. Like, how do you not know this happened? Like, that just seems very like
but if you're focusing, I mean, I can understand that.
All you have to do is put on a Google alert on your phone and you'll find out what happens with this fucking
baby. But I think if nothing else, we saw how technologically literate he was.
Right. So, and I think that was part of his problem. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of what our documentary viewers were going to show too, is that like he's so not
he's not tech savvy at all.
He's not tech savvy at all.
But so the three of them, Gerald, his wife, and Gay, go out and visit the now empty lot. And this is where Gerald starts saying that, he's like, the reason why he's willing to tell the story is that he thinks it's all about redemption. He wants to clear his conscience, and he wants people to know about his work. It's not work, you perv.
Yeah, right. Fucking pervert. I could do the same shit. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
Get off me. I could do it much better than you, by the way.
Well, especially these days when there's so much tech involved. So then the New York fact checker, now the fact checkers are really starting to worry Gay. Because they find the deed of sale, which Gerald has said and has notes from when he says he bought the motel in 1966. Deed of sale says he didn't buy it till 1969, but he's got notes from 1966. So they're trying to, and this is where you can almost see him start to try to rationalize.
Well, no. So what he says is that he accidentally shifted the number upside down.
Right, because everybody writes sixes and nines upside down over and over and over again.
Dyslexic, maybe. I get it, but like, still, no, you're fucking lying.
Yeah,
that's how I feel. Like at the end of it, like I don't feel like the dude has fucking dyslexia. I feel like he's lying.
Yeah, or he went back and just started. So, and this is where you start getting questions. Like even Gay says, were these quote unquote journals, were they actually written contemporaneously? Like, were they written as it was happening?
Right.
Or did he go back and try to write stuff? And that's where he got the dates wrong.
Right.
But again, Gay's kind of rationalizing for him.
And he's always doing that. And this is what pisses me off about the whole documentary. And that I don't understand is his fucking perspective. I'm like, you had too much empathy for your subject.
Well, or he was too concerned. Or was it that he was too concerned? Because I mean, like I said, back in the late 70s, early 80s, between Honor Thy Father was a huge, that was the first expose written about the mafia. Love Thy Neighbor or Thy Neighbor's Wife was a huge exposition about sexual mores in America and that kind of stuff. And then he didn't really have anything like that for a long, long time. So he's got that jazz that, okay, this is my next bestseller. Like, this is what's going to bring me as a journalist back into relevance.
And I think that he thought that.
Oh,
and I think that's why this makes it more of like a Greek tragedy.
Oh, yeah. So
because he's now ending his life on the slope that is, you reported a story that wasn't fact checked and it wasn't good and it was the worst journalism we could have ever had.
Oh yeah. So the New Yorker publishes their excerpt. This is where Gerald
Voyeur's motel.
Yep. And so Gerald all of a sudden finally maybe understands the repercussions of having the story out in public. And starts getting nervous about shit, which he should be.
So it was interesting because we're watching him watch the news coverage of the story. He says he's nervous. And people are calling him.
Oh yeah, and Gay's they've told him don't go out, don't answer the phone.
No, like even his wife is like, Anita's like, hang up the phone, hang up the phone.
Oh yeah, she's yelling at him. Oh yeah,
he just wants to keep talking. Like he's word vomit. Like it's like he is so wrapped up in himself. He doesn't even see you're harming yourself.
Oh yeah, well, so
harming yourself.
And
shut the fuck up. Just shut up.
So and this is where you see so Gerald gets all pissed off at Gay.
Oh yeah. Oh my God.
Because he put his business out there. I didn't want him saying anything about my card collection. They're gonna file lawsuits and lock my house up and steal all my crap and no.
Yeah.
And I love when Gerald's all pissed off sitting there and he's like, he's made it all about himself. Gay made it all about himself. It's me. I'm the guy.
Yeah. This is my story.
You're not the guy. You're
You're just a huge fucking pervert that asked for no consensual.
Yeah, that was dumb enough to tell your story to a journalist. Yeah,
exactly, and give your name out. You're
so then idiot. Well, so then the first repercussion hits. We see the cops show up at their house. Because they've gotten calls. Go figure. With death threats.
Well, they were showing up on his behalf.
Well, they called the cops because he said they were getting phone calls, getting death threats, and that kind of stuff. And it's one of those things where dude, what the hell did you expect to happen? Like you just admitted you were basically spying on people for 30 effing years. Did you think everybody were gonna be like, that's cute, that's adorable, that's fine?
Well, and I think I expressed this to Lauren. I think this is what pisses me off about the documentary is we don't hear from any of the victims, and we don't hear any. Is the story true or not?
I guess
Okay,
I
so
guess
if
my
it
question on
is
that would be, how
true, I
practical
want
would that
to
have been?
hear from the victims, because that fucking sucks.
I'd be curious
Like,
as to like just how practical it would be to even try to track any of them down.
I
Like,
mean, I feel like you have a right to know.
well, I guess that would be my curiosity, because like, so now you're talking 23 years after the sale, here in 2020, or, well, I mean, this came out in 2017. So 20 years after the sale, you almost wonder if anybody sitting at home watching this on Netflix is like, wait a minute, I
I
stayed there
was
in
in that
1986
hotel.
with my wife. What the hell? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to look and see if there's been any follow-ups
Was
now, because
it
now I'm curious.
reported?
Yeah.
Was it like anything? Like, even if my name was written down in a book,
Yeah.
fuck you.
Even if it's not my
Fuck
name,
you.
and I just know that it's me that we're talking about, like,
Right.
then I would be still concerned about it.
All right.
So, and this is where, and I think this actually answers your question, or at least one of the questions about the documentary, is we go back to one of the New Yorker's fact checkers, and
Yeah.
he says, look, basically, Gerald's credibility is a huge issue, and we get it, and everyone's going to hate him, and we knew that everyone was going to hate him the minute that we said we were going to publish this story, but that's okay, because that's going to help the book sales. And that's what this entire documentary really comes down to, is
book sales.
Is that it's all about the book sales and getting the money.
Yeah.
And then, so I guess they're all concerned. So Gay is going to fly back out to Colorado to go hang at their house. And I thought it was interesting that apparently Gay demands that they dress really nicely whenever he's there.
Yes.
Okay.
That was weird, right?
Okay.
But he's a tailor's son. But like, that was weird. But not only that, but like his whole interaction with the documentary crew there, and how he's like, they're trying to trap you.
See, and I actually appreciated that. Like, so I actually appreciated that, because
I did to a point, but at the same time, I'm like, let him fucking talk.
Well, so
Like,
because here's
if it's a documentary, just let
him go.
View his bullshit. Why do you care?
You can
Gay?
post about your shit
Like,
afterwards.
you can Gay.
Well, he cares because book.
The only reason Gay is concerned is because it's going to backlash against his book.
Right.
It's going to be different against his book. That's the only reason he cares. It's not because he's being a good person.
Oh no. So, but like,
no, he's being a fucking asshole. And
so,
he's saying, like, here's the thing though. Just let the motherfucker talk. Like, if we want a real documentary here, just let him talk.
So, and that's the thing I noticed about Gerald is, and you see this over and over again.
He's trying to be his lawyer.
No, like Gerald thinks that everyone is his close friend.
Oh yeah.
Like, he thinks that he and Gay are like really tight. He thinks that he and the documentary crew are like close friends and all that.
Yeah.
And that's totally not the case.
Yeah.
So, and but to your point, so Gay gets testy with the film crew, because they asked the question about the 1966 versus 1969. He says he already answered that. They asked Gerald, hey, would you do it again? Knowing what you know now. And Gerald says, well, hey, you already asked me that question. Don't you already have that on film? And that's where Gay goes off on them and says, hey, look, you're pulling a dumb trick. Like, you're trying to get him to answer differently, because and this, like I said, this is the part I appreciated, because it's true. You're trying to get a different answer out of him because I'm sitting here as opposed to when I'm not sitting here.
I mean, I get it, but at the same time, get the truth. If you are really pissed off about something I wrote or something I said, then fucking say it to my face.
Oh yeah. So that was his point, is like, look, your job is to tell me the story. My job is to then write the story. And he even he's like, Gerald, you're allowed to be pissed off at me for how I wrote the story. That's fine. It's how I wrote the story. Like, that's how that works.
Yeah.
And that was his whole point, because Gerald was like, oh, well, you've never shown me a copy of the manuscript. You've never shown me a copy of this, that, or the other thing. And Gay like stomps on him and is like, look, the last thing, like, no, there's a reason why we don't do that, is because I wrote this based on what you told me, and there can't have been any collaboration in order for this to have been a true story.
Yeah.
So then it gets really bad.
Yeah.
So a reporter from the Washington Post calls him up one night.
God, this is awful.
And says, hey, I've got something that we should talk about because it calls into question your journalistic integrity and the entire premise of this story. So, of course, Gay calls him and it's like, hey, what's up? And this guy sends him a deed of sale from 1980, where apparently they sold the property to an Earl Ballard.
Yeah.
So now it's like, okay, so now, like, what the hell? Like, you didn't even own the hotel for a good chunk of this story.
He was on the verge of publishing his book.
Oh yeah, it's like a couple days.
It was like in print.
Yeah, it's already been printed. It's like a couple days before it drops.
Yeah.
So Gay loses his shit, and he says, honestly, he says, my biggest mistake was talking to that Washington Post reporter, because he basically says this book is in the toilet. Like, that was the quote, was, this book is in the toilet, my credibility is in the toilet.
But then he totally takes it back.
Well, he does later, and he's, but he's sitting there talking with the film crew, and he's like, my God, he's like, dude, my career's ruined, your career's ruined, my credibility's done, all of our credibility is shot, and it's over. And then, we hear the voiceover from Gerald, who said, hey, look, I thought that Earl guy was dead. Well, the public records were still out there that you sold in the hotel, idiot. And he said, he was a friend that basically he kind of sold the hotel to because they were partners in crime and he needed the money, but he still had a key and he still had access to the thing, throughout the entire time.
Yeah.
And so then it's Gerald sitting at his kitchen table reading the reviews of the book that has now come out.
Is this not the part that he's coming down the stairs in the little motorized?
Oh, that was before. Yeah, when he was on his
that is like one of my favorite parts of the documentary.
Well, so that's the crazy thing to me, is how
hilarious.
Oh, so that's what he was going off about. Gay and I are going to have problems. That's because he's talking mad shit as he's in this electric chair coming down the staircase.
He's making his way down the side.
Like he can't handle a flight of stairs.
Have issues.
Oh yeah, he can't do a flight of stairs, but he's going to kick Gay's ass. Sure, that's totally
plausible guy.
But yeah, so then you've got Gerald reading these reviews, and of course the reviews are terrible. He reads one from the New York Times that basically says it's clear the entire book is lies. That everything is made up, and Gerald's getting more and more progressively pissed off because everybody's just calling him out, and he's like, well, they should just pull the book off the shelves. Well, that's not really your call, Skippy. That's what happens when you sign a contract. That's what happens when you say you can go ahead and publish things. You don't get to be that arbiter of what happens with your story anymore. But then, as Lindsay was saying, so then, then they're sitting there and they're watching TV, and Gay's on, I forget who it was, but it was one of the talk shows. And he says, look, actually, the one thing I thought that was a really interesting quote from him is that he didn't want to write about the right people. He wanted to write about the wrong people because he thought it made for more interesting and compelling stories.
And that's the thing, is that, like, if you are doing something like that and you're like taking it from the wrong perspective, then everyone will notice that.
Yeah.
It's like, that's not just like some random thing. Like, come on. You can't just be like, oh, we're gonna,
everything's all like, shiny, happy kittens and flowers. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, you can't just be like, this is the way it's going to be all the time.
But so Earl Ballard was not dead, because 2 days after the interview or the discussion with the Washington Post reporter, Gay calls him, and basically confirms Gerald's story that, yes, the hotel had been sold, but yes, they were both kind of partners in crime with the whole Voyeur thing. Yes, Gerald still had access the whole time. And Gay kind of says, hey, I wish I would have, like, instead of like reacting emotionally like I had, I wish I would have followed up on this, because I wouldn't have disavowed the book, because it turns,
right. So it confirms the story, but it was just not the whole truth.
It's not the whole truth.
Right.
But that still dings your credibility. I mean, like, I'm sorry, like, It
Yeah.
does.
No, for sure.
You know, like,
Yeah, no, I agree.
And here's the thing though, like the New York Times was putting this out. New York Times has
New Yorker.
the New Yorker.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the New Yorker, which even better. I have a subscription to the New
Which
Yorker.
again, another Epstein tie-in.
Well, yeah, but we have like the New Yorker has the best ever fact checker.
Oh yeah. Oh, they talk about that a number of times.
Is real or not. So that scares me as like a person who like loves the New Yorker. Like,
well, and that's the thing, like even listening to their fact checkers and the editor again kind of rationalize their way through this.
yeah.
They're like, well, you know, we did put the disclaimer in up front that it was a single source story, and a lot of things can't be verified, and we're not really sure about the veracity of some of this stuff, but you know, we did our best to verify what we could, and anything that we couldn't verify, we made sure we put a note in that we couldn't verify it.
Yeah.
So again, just rationalizing their way through it.
Totally. But at the same time, like when I'm reading something from the New Yorker, I am 100% assuming that it's
you presume
true.
it's factual.
It's
Yep.
fact checked a million times because the New Yorker has built itself.
That's what they do.
The New Yorker has built itself up to be this super.
It's got decades and decades and decades of credibility. Yeah.
Right. So this is just dinging it for me to be like, this is scary. That's actually scary.
So then it kind of closes out, you know, with Gerald sitting there, you know, all alone. He's like, oh, you know, it's really, you know, lonely out here, da 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 da. And they had talked earlier where they don't neighbor, which apparently neighbor is a verb now.
Well, they're hermits.
Yeah, well, yeah, they don't talk to anybody, and so he, you know, he's talking to the film crew, and he says, you know, I really feel, you know, real companionship with you guys. Well, duh, because you don't have any friends. Like if you had friends,
right? Because you
would
don't
realize
have anyone to talk to.
You would realize what these people were, which is they're there because it's their job, not because they're your friend.
Right.
So yeah, and that's where it wraps up.
Okay, so I just want to say,
things,
I have a few notes written at the end of this. So they kept saying how this was like an interesting and fascinating story, and I'm like, okay, well, this documentary sucks because it does not do a good job of representing this. Like, if you wanted me to think that this was more of a fascinating story, give me more of behind of Gerald Foos and who he is as a person. I want to see more of what he witnessed in the hotel. I need to see more because that sucks. It's not a fascinating story to me. And I don't know if they just couldn't put it out there because there was a book. But this is not a fascinating story to me. And then the other thing is it's terribly disgusting the way he gets away with all of this. I mean, like, here's my thing too, is like, I love serial killer stories. I love all of that. But they normally do a very good job of portraying the victim's point of view, or at least giving a lot of acknowledgement to the victim. In this story, there was no acknowledgement to the victim. And there were victims. And that pisses me off. It almost makes it seem like voyeurism is okay. Peeping Toms are okay. You're going to get a story out of it. Like, no. That's not okay. This is not okay behavior. None of it is. And then the other thing that pisses me off is that, like, peeping Toms and voyeurism is usually a step into a more violent more violent crimes. So it's
So
usually a step towards rape, and it's usually then a step towards murder.
So that was the question you brought up earlier. And so, and I said, hey, we'll talk about this at the end, because I think because of all of the credibility issues this guy has, I'm quite sure the cops like looked at him and went, number one, most of this shit was made up. So, would he even be a suspect in anything else if he couldn't even do this?
Yeah, and I'm not like trying to like poke the bear at anybody that is like at this realm at all, but I'm saying like normally this is just a stepping stone behavior into something much worse.
Oh, for sure.
And I don't like the fact that we didn't hear from any of the victims, because they are victims. Like,
Sure.
that is non-consensual viewing of sex, and maybe perhaps recording of sex if he had done it. I don't know if he did or not, but I just don't like any of it. Like, I think it's just trash, and I think it was meant, like, I feel like the whole documentary felt like I'm supposed to feel some type of empathy or some type of something towards the journalist and towards him, and fuck that. I don't.
Well,
fuck him.
Well, I can,
and
like,
fuck them.
Okay, that's fine, and I think that's great that you feel that way, and I am like totally great with that. Like, that's fine if that's how you feel. But to me, like, being part of the kink and like erotic community, hearing this story made me go, oh, like, it's something to kind of like relate to, where like you have like this, like, I also want to know more about this, but you also don't. And on top of that, like you were saying with like that you just don't want to hear anything about it or anything like that. It's like that community is like, there is like a sect of people that would like to hear more just about that.
Here's the thing is, like, I totally understand like the kink. I get it.
Sure.
But when we're looking at a victim situation where somebody died,
sure, and I'm not
I
talking
don't
about that,
give
though.
a fuck.
I'm not talking about that though. I'm just saying.
But that's what I was
speaking.
talking about, and also maybe women that were went on to be further sexually assaulted.
And yeah, I agree with that.
That creeps me out.
I agree with that.
I don't
think that like people not being aware.
No,
is,
and
like,
I get it.
okay
like,
thing.
I'm not saying that you think that
No,
that's
I know.
okay, but I'm just saying that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
Where
I'm just saying, as somebody,
makes me sick.
As somebody who is like part of like that kink community, where like I see like the things that people like do and experience and stuff, like, yes, it's not okay if they don't if they're unaware of it. It's not okay if you're just voyeuring from a distance and you're not like making people aware.
Well, and again, there's a difference between, consensual, perhaps or even perhaps accidental voyeurism, and buying a goddamn hotel with the express intent.
And that's what I'm saying is that there is
like,
a different.
That's it.
There is a different sect of people that may be interested in this documentary just because of the fact that they're like, it's not that somebody was being watched like unintentionally, but the fact that they were just like curious about like how people act and hearing about it from a documentary rather than doing their own experiments is something that people might be interested in doing. But
also let them know that it mostly centers around the journalist.
Sure, and that's
like
totally
it
fine.
doesn't.
Well, because again, it's about the story leading up to the publication of the book.
It's more about the publication of the book.
Well, and that's the thing, is that never once does it say it's just about this one guy. It's about how we got from point A to point B. And And that's the case for a lot of documentaries where it's like how we got from point A to point B. Regardless of how we got there, and they made a point about it. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'm okay with watching something that, even though like at the end all be all, I'm like, oh, that's kind of fucked up or whatever. At the same time though, I did enjoy hearing like the different types of things that he did, the experiments that he ran, the things that he did that I was like, oh, that's crazy that he did that. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sitting there going like, great.
Oh yeah, no. And I mean, realistically, it probably, well, but I mean, we said this about The Vow too. This probably could have only been an hour.
Sure, yeah, it could have been an hour.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Well, it was about
but at the same time, there are like aspects to the story that I go, you know, as somebody who's part of the kink community, I can see why this would be interesting. Or
Right.
as somebody who's part of like the kink community, I can see why this might be something that people want to watch and learn more about.
Yeah.
Regardless of whether or not it's about sex or if it's about experimenting with people that are just part of that, you know,
Yeah.
Well, and if
experience.
nothing else, learn to keep an eye out on vents in hotel rooms. That's the
Yeah, if nothing else,
I will
if
always
nothing
bring
else,
a dog with me to
Don't for-
every hotel
don't forget to
room.
bring a towel.
Don't
You
forget
never
to bring
know
a towel. Gotta plug the vent.
Like, if you never know where a hotel towel has been, then you also don't know where a hotel vent has been.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to say it's okay. I'm just saying that, you know, in this situation, it's already said and done. And this is what this guy was trying to do. And, you know, whether it was all right or it wasn't all right, this is still the outcome of the situation.
Right.
And as much as it was not okay to do those things, we still have
There are still lessons to be learned.
right, there's lessons to be learned. Exactly.
I think the biggest lesson that I learned is that fame and greed will get to you, and you want to have the best story always, and you will overlook your natural instincts as a reporter to get
Yep.
that good goddamn story.
Also, and that was the funny thing. Like there was a comment from Gay at some point during the doc where he said, you know, everybody wants to write the next great American novel. And he actually says, oh, and this is where he gets into that, where he says, you know, fuck the next great American novel. He's like, I want to write something that people want to read. And he's like, and that's where he says, I don't want to write about the right people. I want to write about the wrong people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the point.
I think he was chasing the tea.
Well, and like I said, you know, he hadn't been relevant, you know, to that point that he was earlier in his career for a long time.
Well,
And-
yeah. I mean,
that Russian notoriety is a hell of a drug. It's the same thing
a long time of his career into this panning out to be something.
Yeah.
Right.
So going through 30 years of your life and like even being in those crypts and getting through everything and being like, okay, yeah, this is a thing.
Right.
And then finding out that things don't add up and things aren't exactly what you think.
Exactly right.
I think that's when it comes to a point where he's like, I'm not sure.
And that's the funny part.
Prove it.
If you notice the dates,
so convinced that what he was doing was true and right and nonfiction.
He even
and
says
he had the best story possible, and then that goes totally to the fuck side.
He even says at the very beginning, you're a fool to have only one source.
Right.
You're a fool
and
to have
his
one source
for
and
that
yet,
was one source. So like he fucking knew, dude.
Well, so and the funny thing to me is if you notice, like, and this is what, and it just dawned on me just because we sat here and talked through it. So Gay, you know, Gay gets the first letter from him in 1980. Gay goes out and has that night up in the attic with him in 1980. 1980 is the year that Gerald sold the hotel to that guy. So I'm wondering if his initial
right before,
well, if his initial reach out to Gay wasn't as a result of, hey, I'm going to sell and get out of this now.
Yeah.
and then he kind of kept needing to amplify it because I mean, it's not like this is, and it's not like this is the only thing that Gay Talese was doing for 30 years before this came up. Like
No.
he did have other.
This was just one story he kept open, and that's what he said at the beginning. Yep. I believe that. Like, I'm not discrediting his whole thing as a journalist, but I'm just saying, like, you overlook some shit.
He got a little jumpy.
Yeah, he got a little too big for his britches, and he overlooked some shit.
All right, so that for this one?
We're good. We love ya. Next Friday, we will be doing a 90-day wrap up.
So then like I said, the next doc we have to do has got to be the one that I have a crazy, stupid family.
Which is what? Which one?
Evil Genius.
Okay.
Oh God. I didn't want to do that because it destroys my soul.
90 Day Fiancé.
But I'll do it for you.
90 Day Fiancé.
You did the vow and that didn't destroy your soul.
No. Evil Genius destroys my soul.
Okay, well then pick a different one. Pick a different one. I'm good.
No, we'll do Evil Genius with you. It's fine.
It's your show. I'm just here to be a supporting cast member.
Yeah, we'll do Evil Genius for you, Dave.
Evil Genius.
All right, cool.
Yeah, we're doing it.
All right, so you have 2 weeks to watch that one. All right, so
love
watch
y'all.
90 Day Fiancé and watch Evil Genius.
Bye.